Rebecca Knol, CEO of the Chamber of Mines and Energy in South Australia. Great to have you with us again on Flow.
Yeah, likewise, Ricky. Good morning.
Thanks. Look, we had the announcement from the Premier, Stephen Marshall, yesterday that you've jumped on, but it wasn't quite going as far as the Chamber would like to go.
No, not at all, but it's a really good first step, and we applaud the Premier's vision to become the nation's nuclear industry capital. But if we roll back a bit, just the last week really, out of COP26, there's been a renewed global interest in nuclear because basically everyone knows that it will be a key to a carbon neutral future, and the world has now finally agreed that we need to hit net zero. So how do we do that? And nuclear is one of the most efficient fuels for that. Nuclear energy offers a zero emissions energy source with the ability to provide safe, reliable and baseload power. And we know that's important. We've seen what's happened with the deployment of renewables, but everybody working in this space also knows that we actually can't get there on renewables alone. So it's pretty exciting. Around the world, China has now announced the building of 150 new reactors by 2035. That's just massive, 150 new reactors. France, of course, is back in the game. They've got announcements to build around 14 new reactors. Poland was a little bit like Australia with no nuclear capability, but they've also announced a build program. So, these are really exciting times. But it also says to Australia that everybody is in the race, and at the moment we're just not.
There was a great number of people involved in the commentary at and around the Glasgow Climate Conference scoffing at the talk of using nuclear energy, but those examples you've listed suggest that some of the world's major powers are moving in that direction to achieve net zero.
Yeah, they absolutely are, and even the UK has committed £200 million to match funding from a consortium led by Rolls-Royce to build 16 SMRs. And that's probably the announcement that's most relevant to Australia because, of course, Australia will never deploy large-scale nuclear reactors as the media continue to put photographs of big reactors in our newspapers. Australia doesn't have the capability to support that because we just don't have the energy load needed for that, but we are a fantastic location for SMRs, and they really will be our future. So that's small modular reactors. And as Keith Pitt, who's the Federal Resources Minister, recently said, it's like deploying Tesla technology, not the T-model Ford, and it very much is that. It will take us to the forefront of nuclear energy.
And there was some commentary around the National and Liberal government's roadmap or energy plan and this open idea to new technologies, and they had left open this possibility that nuclear might move within the 2050 time frame to be a key element of the energy plan.
Yes, well, as some of your listeners may or may not know, the reason why we don't have nuclear energy is because there is a prohibition on nuclear energy in Australia, and that was a result of some political horse trading that went on during the Howard era. And essentially, under our Environment Protection and Biodiversity Act, there is just 4 little words that say no nuclear power. So, it's crazy, really, that we've got a prohibition on nuclear energy. There was, of course, hope around Australia that Scott Morrison would overturn that prohibition or at least have a conversation to enable us to put it into the mix. Australia is really going to end up being last in the decarbonisation race, and that's the big concern for our youth, and it should be their concern, because we can't achieve it with renewables, and hydrogen, which gets all the publicity at the moment, is more than 15 years away from commercialisation. So hydrogen is a long way off. We actually don't have the luxury of time. We need carbon neutral energy now, or a zero emissions energy source now. We've got the technology. SMRs are here. As we've seen from the UK, they're pumping a considerable amount of money into SMRs. They're ready for deployment from as early as 2026, and we're still sitting here on our hands with a prohibition in one piece of federal legislation.
Well, I'll talk about uranium in a moment, but we spoke with probably the lead spokesperson for the Liberal Democrat Party running for the Senate in Queensland, Campbell Newman, former Premier there. He said some of the state MPs and federal ones like Alex Antic and Rowan Ramsey were wimping out on nuclear energy here in South Australia because they weren't moving to remove those 4 words from the nuclear regulation and prohibitions. Why is it so hard or so slow to get someone to have a crack at that?
Yeah, Really a fantastic question. I don't know. Rowan Ramsey it has been fantastic in terms of trying to nudge that debate, but it's like every politician will say to you, oh, yeah, I really like, the idea of nuclear, but, it's just too hard. The people of Australia don't want it. And I think there is still a perception that Australians don't want nuclear energy, and that's just not being mirrored in the polls. The polls are increasingly saying that Australians do want to have a conversation about nuclear energy, and certainly our youth, and I speak to our youth a lot, and they're always saying to me, why don't we have nuclear power? And my standard response is go and ask your parents, because really that's the reason we don't have nuclear power, is that people have not been prepared to have, a good, robust conversation about it. They just, the media ends up polarising the debate, and it all gets lost in the noise. So it is really unfortunate, because as you say, South Australia is really well positioned. We've got world-class uranium deposits. We have 25% of the world's uranium, and 80% of Australia's uranium. And as many of your listeners, I'm sure, actually even work on these mines. We've got 2 operational mines in South Australia, BHP's Olympic Dam and Heathgate's Beverley mine, with a third mine, Boss Energy's Honeymoon, soon to recommence operations. Clearly the demand for uranium is not slowing, so for anybody in the uranium game, good times ahead. So really South Australia in particular, but more generally Australia should be getting on this bandwagon.
Yeah, and I want to talk about what's happened in Greenland on uranium in a moment, but I noticed that the Australian Workers' Union have told us on Flow before, they're a large union here and they support using nuclear energy, so this doesn't necessarily seem to be a left versus right or union versus business debate. It seems to be those who see the nuclear opportunity and those that don't.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Ricky, and that's been our experience as well, that they're also very supportive of nuclear. And indeed, there is a lot of politicians that are supportive of it. But like your comments about Rowan Ramsey, people appearing to be wimping out from this conversation. We need some leadership in this space. There's plenty of people willing to have the conversation, but they're all keeping quiet. It's not our job to keep quiet. It's our job to get out there, as we did yesterday with a media release, to say, yeah, this is the time. The time is now. Look at what's happening out of COP26. Look at what China's doing. France is back in the game. Poland is up and running. The UK is funding it. These are major announcements around the world.
And as you say, in some of our broadcast areas in South Australia, there are 2 and soon to be 3 mines operating extracting uranium. Now, Greenland, their parliament on Tuesday night have banned a uranium mine that was being proposed by an Australian company, not because they were doing the wrong thing, but they've decided not to go in that mining direction in Greenland. That's surely going to help our local uranium price.
Well, you certainly would think so. With operating mines here and another one to come on board, we've also got another potential mine that's going through development at the moment. So, yeah, it's looking great for South Australia. We've also got a really big concentration of uranium and nuclear experts here in South Australia. We've got this Australian Radioactive Waste Agency here in Adelaide, and we've also got the National Radioactive Waste Management Facility soon to be here in South Australia. We've got this amazing concentration of specialists, and we keep saying, let's harness these specialists, let's really lead the energy transition. And I guess that's part of where we're coming from. We have led the renewables transition, and we are experiencing firsthand all the problems that are arising from that. So we need to stay on the front foot and continue to lead the energy transition by being source agnostic and really opening ourselves up to understanding that our energy mix is going to be just that. There will be gas, there will be wind, there will be solar, there may be hydrogen into the future, but there definitely needs to be nuclear energy, and we seem not to be wanting to have that conversation, and yet we all know that nuclear is a fantastic baseload match or twin, if you like, to gas. So gas underpinned by nuclear, hydrogen underpinned by nuclear, renewables underpinned by nuclear. So it's an incredibly diverse supply of energy, and one that we really should be using to our advantage to grow manufacturing in the state, to grow jobs in the state, and to grow the wealth of our state.
Well, Rebecca Knol from the Chamber of Mines and Energy, thanks for sharing that latest update with us here on Flow.
Always a pleasure, Ricky. Have a good day.